You won't believe what he did when he found out his best friend of 15 years had been sleeping with his wife. He did not confront him. He did not post about it online. He did not call a lawyer or move out or do any of the things that a rational person does when the two people they trusted most in the world have been systematically deceiving them for 18 months. He waited. He planned. And what he did on a Tuesday night in November ended with two people in hospital, one person in handcuffs, and a friendship that had survived 15 years of everything life could throw at it destroyed so completely that the people who knew them still cannot talk about what happened without going quiet in the middle of the sentence. Tonight we have 3 of Reddit's darkest true revenge stories. Stories that went further than anyone planned. Stories that ended in hospital beds and jail cells, and the specific cold aftermath of consequences that cannot be undone no matter how justified the anger that produced them felt in the moment. These stories are not satisfying in the clean way that revenge stories usually are. They are dark. They are bloody. They are the kind of stories that make you understand why people say that the second victim of revenge is always the person taking it. Turn your lights off. Listen to the rain, and remember that the line between justice and something you cannot come back from is thinner than it has ever looked from the outside. Story 1. The Best Friend. I want to tell you about Daniel and Marcus. They had been best friends since they were 9 years old. 26 years of shared history. The same school, the same group of friends, the best man at each other's weddings, the person you called at 2 in the morning when everything fell apart because you knew without question that he would answer. The kind of friendship that most people spend their entire lives hoping to find and never quite do. Daniel found out on a Wednesday afternoon in March when he came home early from a business trip that had been canceled at the last minute, and found Marcus's car in his driveway. I am not going to describe what he found inside his house because I think you already know what he found inside his house, and because the specific details of that moment are not the point of this story. The point of this story is what Daniel did next, and what it cost him, and what it cost Marcus, and why, 3 years later, neither of them has fully recovered from a Tuesday night in November that began as revenge and ended as something that required an ambulance and a police report and a conversation with a criminal defense attorney that Daniel has described as the worst hour of his life. He did not react in the moment. That is the first thing that everyone who knows this story finds most difficult to understand. That Daniel stood in his own house on a Wednesday afternoon and looked at what he found and made a decision in the space of approximately 30 seconds that was so cold and so controlled that the people who love him most still find it frightening when they think about it. He left, he got back in his car, he drove to a hotel and he checked in and he called in sick to work for the rest of the week, and he spent 4 days alone in a hotel room planning. What Daniel knew about Marcus that almost nobody else knew was this. Marcus had a gambling problem, not a casual relationship with poker or sports betting, but a serious, sustained addiction that had cost him his first marriage, and a significant amount of money that he had borrowed from people who were not the kind of people you borrow money from if you intend to take your time paying it back. Daniel knew about it because Marcus had come to him 3 years earlier in genuine crisis, and Daniel had lent him $11,000 to clear a debt that Marcus had described as the last one. The debt that would end the problem if it was cleared. It had not ended the problem. Daniel had known this for some time but had said nothing because Marcus was his best friend, and you do not call your best friend a liar when he is drowning. During those 4 days in the hotel, Daniel made some calls. Not to mutual friends, not to lawyers, to the people Marcus owed money to, the current people, the ones whose names Daniel had come across in a conversation with Marcus 6 months earlier that Marcus had clearly not intended to have. He told them where Marcus would be on Tuesday night. He told them what time Marcus would arrive. He told them that Marcus had recently come into some money, implying, without stating directly, that the debt could now be cleared if they wanted to pursue it. He did not tell them to hurt Marcus. He has maintained this consistently in every version of the story he has told since that night, and I believe him when he says it because I think Daniel understood on some level what he was setting in motion, and chose to understand it less clearly than he was capable of understanding it. On Tuesday night, Marcus was approached by two men outside the bar where Daniel had told the people he owed money that Marcus would be. What happened in the following 12 minutes is documented in a police report that Daniel has read many times since that night, and that he says he cannot read without his hands shaking. Marcus spent 11 days in hospital. 2 broken ribs, a fractured orbital socket, significant soft tissue damage that required surgery and that has left him with a slight but permanent asymmetry in his face that his current girlfriend says she does not notice, and that Marcus notices every morning in the mirror. The 2 men were arrested within 48 hours. In the course of the investigation, the police traced the chain of information that had led them to Marcus outside that bar on that Tuesday night. That chain led to Daniel. Daniel was charged with conspiracy to commit assault. He took a plea deal. He served 4 months of a 12-month sentence and was released on probation. He lost his job during the legal process. He lost the house in the divorce that his wife had initiated the day after she found out what he had done. He lost the legal fees that consumed the savings he had spent 15 years building. Marcus did not press charges against Daniel directly. He did not cooperate with the prosecution beyond what was legally required. He has not spoken to Daniel since the Tuesday night outside the bar, and Daniel does not expect that he ever will. The wife, whose name I will not use because she is a private person who has moved on from both of them, remarried 2 years ago, and by all accounts is happy in a way that the people who know her say she never quite was during the marriage. Daniel lives alone in a rented apartment. He works a job that is significantly below his previous professional level because the conviction makes certain doors permanently closed. He has described the 4 days in that hotel room as the worst decision of his life and the most understandable one simultaneously, and says he is not sure he would make a different choice if he went back to that Wednesday afternoon and found Marcus's car in his driveway again. I think about that last part more than anything else in this story. What do you think Daniel would do differently? And do you think Marcus, looking at his face in the mirror every morning, feels anything that resembles guilt? Revenge never costs only what you expect it to cost. The next story proves that sometimes the person who strikes back pays a price that has nothing to do with the law and everything to do with what you discover about yourself in the moment you decide to stop being reasonable. Story 2. The Landlord's Daughter. I am going to tell you this story from the perspective of the person who started it, because I think context matters when the ending is as dark as this one is, and because I think you deserve to understand how something that began as a completely justified response to a genuine wrong became something that put a 24-year-old woman in a hospital bed for 6 days and changed the trajectory of 2 lives in ways that neither of them had standing in the parking lot on a Friday night. Her name was Raina, 28 years old, single mother of a 4-year-old daughter, working 2 jobs to cover rent on an apartment she had lived in for 3 years without a single late payment, without a single complaint from neighbors, without any of the things that give a landlord legitimate cause to end a tenancy. Her landlord gave her notice anyway. 60 days, no stated reason, the kind of termination that is technically legal in jurisdictions without strong tenant protection, and that is practiced by a specific kind of property owner who has identified a tenant they want to replace with someone willing to pay more, and has discovered that the easiest way to accomplish this is to simply end the tenancy and wait for the law to do the rest. Rena fought it. She consulted a tenant rights organization. She documented everything. She sent the letters she was advised to send and kept copies of everything she received in response. She did everything correctly and by the book, and at the end of 60 days she was still required to leave because the notice was technically legal, and the system that was supposed to protect her had no mechanism to help her in her specific situation. She moved out on a Saturday into a smaller apartment that cost more because the rental market had moved significantly in the 3 years since she had signed her original lease, and she could not afford what she had been paying even if she could find it. Her daughter changed schools because the new apartment was in a different district. Raina took on additional hours at her second job to cover the increased rent. 3 weeks after she moved out, she drove past her old building and saw that the apartment had been renovated. New windows, new front door, a freshly painted facade that the building had not had in the 3 years she had lived there. and was being advertised at a rental price that was 60% higher than what she had been paying. She sat in her car outside the building for a long time. Then she drove home and she called her cousin. Her cousin's name I will not give because his involvement in what followed is not something he has ever been charged with, and I am not going to be the thing that changes that. What I will tell you is that her cousin was the kind of person who knew people who knew how to make certain things happen, and that Rena, sitting in her kitchen at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night while her daughter slept in the next room, made a series of decisions that she has described in the Reddit post that brought this story to public attention as the worst decisions of her life, and the ones that felt most justified in the moment of making them. She found out that her landlord had a daughter, 24 years old, lived alone, worked at a salon 2 miles from the apartment building her father owned. She found out the daughter's car. She found out the salon's closing time. What happened in the parking lot of that salon on a Friday night at 9:30 p.m. is something Rena has never described in full detail in any public forum, and that I am not going to reconstruct from the pieces that are publicly available, because some details do not need to be said to be understood. The landlord's daughter spent 6 days in hospital. She had done nothing wrong. She had no involvement in her father's property management decisions, and almost certainly no knowledge of Rena's situation or anyone in it. She was 24 years old, and she went to work and came home, and on a Friday night at 9:30 she walked to her car in a parking lot and found people waiting for her who had no legitimate grievance with her personally. Rena was arrested 4 days later. Her cousin was arrested the same day. The charges were serious, the kind of serious that carries mandatory minimum sentences and that a public defender cannot make go away regardless of the circumstances that preceded them. Rena's daughter went to live with Rena's mother during the legal proceedings. She was 4 years old when her mother was arrested and 7 years old when her mother came home. 3 years that Rena has described as the price she paid for 60 days notice and a 60% rent increase and a drive past a freshly painted building on a Saturday afternoon. The landlord sold the building 14 months after his daughter was discharged from hospital. Whether this was connected to what had happened or entirely coincidental is something nobody who knows the story has ever been able to determine. Rena posted her story on Reddit from her mother's house 3 weeks after her release. She did not ask for sympathy, and she did not offer excuses, and she did not describe what happened in the parking lot in any detail. She said only that she had made choices she could not take back, and that her daughter had grown up without her for 3 years because of those choices, and that the injustice that had started everything had not been made right by anything that followed it. The post received 47,000 upvotes and 3,000 comments before she deleted her account. I have thought about that parking lot many times since I read her story, about the 24-year-old woman who walked to her car on a Friday night, and about the 4-year-old girl who went to live with her grandmother, and about the landlord painting his building and raising the rent, and about the specific chain of entirely human decisions that connected all of those things to each other on a line that nobody standing at any point on it could see the full length of. What do you think Rena thinks about when she looks at her daughter now? And what do you think the landlord thinks about when he looks at his? Some stories begin with a wrong so clear that the response feels inevitable, and some of those stories end somewhere so far from where they began that the original wrong becomes almost impossible to see from where you are standing at the end. Our final story is the darkest one tonight, because unlike the others, it did not end with prison or hospital. It ended with something quieter and more permanent than either of those things. Story 3. The River. I have been trying to write this story for 2 years, not because the facts are complicated. The facts are actually very simple, the kind of simple that makes what happened more difficult to process rather than less, but because every time I have sat down to tell it, I have found myself stopping at the same point in the narrative and being unable to continue in a way that does not feel like a betrayal of something I am not sure I have the right to name. I am going to tell it now because I think it needs to be told, and because the person at the center of it is no longer in a position to tell it themselves, and because someone should. His name was Aaron, 31 years old, outdoors instructor, spent his working life taking groups of teenagers into the wilderness and bringing them back changed in the specific positive way that genuine wilderness experience produces in young people who have never had it. He was good at his job in the way of someone who was born to it, patient, knowledgeable, the kind of calm that comes from being genuinely comfortable in wild places and wanting other people to feel that comfort too. His ex-girlfriend's name was Sasha. They had been together for 4 years and had broken up 7 months before the events I am going to describe. Amicably by all accounts, the kind of breakup where both people are sad, but neither is angry and both wish the other well and mean it. Sasha began dating a man named Cole approximately 3 months after the breakup. Cole knew Aaron not well. They had met 4 or 5 times in social contexts during the period when Aaron and Sasha were together, the kind of peripheral acquaintance of a partner's social circle that does not constitute a real relationship in either direction. Aaron had no particular feeling about Cole one way or another, as far as anyone who knew him could determine. He was not angry about Sasha dating someone new. He had said as much to mutual friends in terms that were clearly genuine. What Aaron discovered in October, 7 months after the breakup, 4 months after Sasha and Cole had begun dating, was that the timeline was not what it appeared to be. He found out, through a conversation with a mutual friend who had assumed he already knew, that Cole and Sasha had been involved before the breakup. Not briefly and not ambiguously, but in a sustained and deliberate way that had been carefully concealed from Aaron for the final 5 months of his 4-year relationship. The breakup that had felt mutual and sad and honest had been engineered. He had been managed out of a relationship by 2 people who had been conducting a parallel one inside it, and who had constructed the ending in a way that gave Aaron nothing to be angry about because he did not know what had actually happened. Aaron did not confront Sasha. He did not confront Cole. He went to work the following Monday and led a group of 16-year-olds on a 3-day river expedition the way he had done dozens of times before. And he did it well because he was a professional and because the kids in his group deserved his full attention and he gave it to them. He spent the evenings of that 3-day expedition sitting by the river after the group had gone to sleep and thinking. Cole was an amateur kayaker, enthusiastic but not experienced. The specific combination of confidence and limited technical knowledge that is common in people who have taken up an outdoor sport in adulthood and have progressed quickly enough to believe their skill level is higher than it is. Aaron knew this because Sasha had mentioned Cole's kayaking several times during the period when Aaron had not yet known what was actually happening. In the innocent way of someone describing a new partner's hobbies to an old one without understanding the full context of that conversation, Aaron knew the rivers in their region the way he knew his own hands. Every grade, every technical section, every place where the water did things that required specific knowledge to navigate safely and where overconfidence produced consequences that the river did not negotiate. He sent Cole a message in October, a friendly message, the kind of message that 2 people on the periphery of a mutual social circle might exchange without it seeming unusual. He mentioned that he was leading a group trip on a specific river the following weekend, and that if Cole wanted to join as an adult volunteer, it would be a good opportunity to get some river time in. He mentioned accurately that the section they would be running was accessible to intermediate paddlers. He did not mention that the section included a technical rapid that was accessible to intermediate paddlers in the specific conditions of the summer and early autumn, but that had become significantly more dangerous in October following a period of heavy rainfall that had raised the water level and changed the character of the rapid in ways that were not visible from the bank and that required specific current knowledge to navigate safely. Cole accepted the invitation. I want to stop here and be precise about something because I think precision matters more in this story than in any other story I have told tonight. Aaron did not lie to Cole about the river. He did not tell Cole the rapid was safe when he knew it was dangerous. He withheld current information that Cole did not know to ask for and that Aaron knew Cole did not have, and that would have changed Cole's decision if he had known it. Whether that constitutes something actionable in a legal sense is something that was examined carefully by people with more legal knowledge than I have, and that produced an answer I am not going to share because it is not the point of this story. Cole capsized in the rapid. He was in the water for 4 minutes before he was recovered by Aaron and another adult volunteer who were both downstream and who performed the recovery with the efficiency of people who had trained for exactly this situation. Cole was alive when he came out of the water. He was hypothermic and had sustained a head injury from contact with a submerged rock during the capsize, and he was airlifted to hospital from a field that Aaron had identified in advance as a viable landing zone. Cole survived. He was in hospital for 9 days. He has a permanent hearing loss in his left ear from the head injury and describes episodes of vertigo that have continued in the 2 years since the incident and that his doctors have told him may be permanent. The investigation that followed examined whether Aaron had been negligent in his assessment of the conditions and his communication of those conditions to Cole as a volunteer participant. The investigation concluded that Aaron had met the technical standard of care required by his professional obligations in terms of the information he had provided to the group and to adult volunteers prior to the trip. It also concluded that Aaron had made a risk assessment error in including the rapid in the route given the October water levels, and issued a formal finding of professional negligence that resulted in the suspension of his instructing certification for 18 months. Aaron did not appeal the suspension. He resigned from his position before the suspension took effect. Aaron never worked as an instructor again. He moved away 14 months later. The people who knew him say the person who left was not the same one who sat by that river in October deciding what to share and what to withhold. A river does not care about reasons. It responds to physics, not to grievance, not to justice. And Aaron understood this better than anyone. What do you think he decided on those evenings by the river? And do you think he has ever allowed himself to answer whether what happened to Cole was what he intended? Thank you for listening. 3 stories from the darkest end of human revenge. Stories that did not end with satisfaction or justice or the clean resolution of a wrong made right. Daniel, who spent 4 days in a hotel room planning something that cost him his marriage, his career, his savings, and 4 months of his freedom, and who says he is not sure he would choose differently. Reina, who lost 3 years with her daughter because a landlord painted a building and raised the rent, and a 24-year-old woman walked to her car on a Friday night and found people waiting for her who had no legitimate grievance with her personally. And Aaron, who sat by a river in October and made a calculation and then led a man onto water with information withheld in a way that the law could not quite name but that he has named for himself in the 2 years since he resigned and moved away and stopped working the job he was born to do. None of these people got what they wanted. None of these situations were made right by what was done to make them right. The original wrongs, the betrayal, the eviction, the concealment are still there underneath everything that followed them, unchanged and unresolved, like the submerged rocks in a river that the water runs over without moving. Revenge does not move the rocks, it just puts more people in the water. Lock your doors tonight. Think carefully before you decide that what you are feeling is justice. And if you have your own story, something you did in the heat of a wrong that you are still paying for, something you watched someone do that went further than anyone planned, leave it below. We read every single one. Good night, and listen to the rain.